Guys, I wanted to do a quick introduction. This is Mark Yegge. He's one of my really good friends and mentors. I met him. Mark, we've only known each other for a little over a year. Can you believe that?
Wow. Seems a lot
I
longer.
met him at an event in Philadelphia. He was on stage. He was this charismatic speaker, hedge fund manager. He was the co-founder of the M1 Tribe, which is a mastermind group I'm in. And so he was just kind of up on a pedestal. And since then, we've become really good friends. And his resume is a mile long. He's a Dale Carnegie trainer, an amazing public speaker. He's also a hypnotist. So he does some really amazing things. Today, we're going to talk about how to win friends and influence people, which Mark has extensive experience with in person and with Dale Carnegie's classic book. So, Mark, did I miss anything with the introduction?
No, you missed that. You're my mentor.
It goes both ways sometimes, yeah. But I've grown and learned so much from you in the last year that I'm super grateful to have you
thanks,
on as a guest and to share your experience. So
all right, well, let's get at it.
Started,
yeah.
So before we get started, I think what people need to remember when they want to learn how to win friends and influence people is that at the core, people just want to be loved and appreciated.
That's it. That's it. And if you can make people feel appreciated, because that's a tough thing, is a lot of people just don't get that enough, right? We kind of take people for granted sometimes, and making them feel loved and appreciated, it's such a huge thing. And that's really, Dale Carnegie wrote this book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. He wrote it 105 years ago or something like that. It stood the test of time. And he's got some principles in there. He's got like 33 principles, but the first 9 are the big ones. And they all really revolve around feeling loved and appreciated and really showing how much you care about the other person, which is so huge.
Yes. So this is one of those books like Think and Grow Rich that you read, and it's mostly stuff that you know, but I read it, I'm like, oh, how can I forget that? Like forgetting to smile and someone's name and all these different principles we're going to talk about. But it's the easy stuff. And this book is like, it's the textbook on how to make people feel loved and appreciated, really. So we'll talk about some of those strategies.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it is. It's a great book. If you read it, since it is 100 years old, you start reading about Henry Ford, and they quote Abraham Lincoln and a lot of the old timers, because those are the guys that were around that were telling the stories then. They've written a new version called How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age, which is also good. And it talks about how people are using technology now to do the same thing. So it's also a good read. But these principles are throughout both books. It's really cool. The first one is the only one that starts with the negative word, right? It says, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. And if you think about how important that is, how much do you like being around people that whine, people that complain all the time? I mean, it just sucks the energy out of the air. And you want to try to be as positive as you can. Somebody that I met a few years ago said about me, nobody can be that positive. And even when things are tough, on tough days, it's hard to be positive, but you got to still kind of fake until you make it, even on those days, because that energy is infectious.
Yeah, and I generally either stop hanging around those people, or you and I both. I know you do this. We're master reframers. So exactly. when we're hanging around people that criticize and complain, we generally take a very gentle, subtle approach, and we push them back into reframing that to be a positive issue, right?
Yeah, and don't you find a lot of people thank you after you do that?
They do, because most people don't even know they're doing it. They don't want to be criticizers or complainers, but they hang around those people, so then they start doing it naturally. And when you have the ability to, in a subtle way, without condemning them, to reframe them, they go, oh, I didn't even realize that. Thank you.
So true. So true. So that's the first principle. Don't criticize, condemn, and complain. And then they get more fun after that.
So Mark,
go ahead.
One more point on that is that when you do condemn, criticize, and complain, people's walls go up, right? They instantly shut down, and they think either I'm not good enough, or they think that person has to be wrong. And so you create this barrier. You create this barrier between the two of you. And, if you think about at Tony Robbins' event, Date with Destiny, he says, always bring out the positive first before you give that feedback, which might be taken as criticism. Because if you start with what's wrong, they'll shut down. And I've seen that when I, was coaching athletes. Hey, you screwed this up. They're gone. You can't even help them then.
Right. Right. But if they know you're coming from love, like we started the call, is, you care about them. So you're going to tell them what you like about them. And, and then you're going to kind of give them some suggestions on how to improve, maybe challenge them a little bit. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
how many times have you walked into a grocery store and you go, hey, how's it going? And they go, well, only 20 minutes till quitting time. Or, it could be better if I was drinking a beer or whatever. It's like, it's just a negative energy around them. And so the reframing is critical,
Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, we got a lot to cover. So what's number 2?
all right, let's cover. Number 2 is give honest and sincere appreciation. And that, again, more about how you appreciate somebody, how you love them, how you tell them, what they're doing right. And you just kind of care that they're around, that they're in your life. And you tell them that, and you share that. So critical.
Yeah. And what you focus on expands.
Sure.
So if you're criticizing that, you're going to find more things to criticize. And if you're finding reasons to appreciate people,
Right.
they're going to look to duplicate that because they want more appreciation.
Yeah.
So if you like when somebody does something, even if it's 1/10 of what they do and you appreciate it, just keep telling them how much you appreciate it, and they'll find themselves doing more of it because, again, people want to be loved and appreciated.
Yeah. Well, Dale Carnegie had a thing in his book. It says the rule is give honest and sincere appreciation, not just give appreciation. It's like you really have to mean it. So you got to get in the habit of giving it, but also really taking time to care about what you're saying and how you're doing it.
And people know when that comes from the heart, right? Like if it comes from your head, and this is what, I've taken your speaking class, and this is what you talk about a lot is, you speak from the head or the heart. And when you give that appreciation from the heart, people feel it. It's a totally different energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next one is arouse an eager want. So you have to make people want to be excited, want to be alive, want to be in your presence. And it's an eager want. It's like they have to want to do things. You can't force them to do things. You have to motivate them and make them want to do it. And again, sincerely and honestly.
Yeah. So for me, that means vision, right? Giving them a vision to be excited about. Because I think you and I, it's probably pretty easy for us to have a vision, and we hang around people with vision and we just know we can accomplish things. But a lot of people, they don't have that. And so if you want to get them excited about things, to see you differently, if you can give them a vision and you believe in them, then it starts to change how they see themselves as well. And they get excited about accomplishing something that maybe they didn't think they could do before.
Yeah, then they're going to want to do it. They're going to want to go out. They're going to feel, maybe they're going to make you proud by doing it, or make somebody else proud by doing it. But however you can arouse that want is a critical way of doing it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Number 4, become genuinely interested, right?
Yeah, become genuinely interested in other people and what they're doing. And not just, hey, what do you do? Oh, cool. And then when you're thinking about what you want to say, but actually just taking the time to stop and be present and really go into their energy and say, what's important about what they're doing, what their life is about. Be really careful. And you know it when somebody is being genuinely interested in you, right? You know it. Like when you introduce yourself at a cocktail party or a mixer or a networking event or something like that, and you can kind of see them glazing over and they're thinking about what they're going to say, or they're looking over your shoulder at somebody, you can tell. But if they're genuinely interested, you can also tell.
Yes.
Makes a huge difference.
So most of us get so worried about how we look, right? We're so worried about like, oh, what's Mark going to think of me, that I forget to, like you said, step into your energy. I love that term because that's how I think about it too.
Yeah.
When I get outside of my head and I'm watching your body language, I'm observing you, I'm asking you questions.
Sure.
Everything changes, not only for me, because I get to stop worrying about myself and I get to find a way to meet your needs. And then you're like, wow, this Nick guy, there's something about him I really like.
That's right. That's right. And that leads us into the next one, because you're so great at the next one, which is smile, right? And we often forget to smile because, again, we're in our heads, not in our hearts. When we're in our hearts, it's easy to smile because we're happy, we're thinking about positive things normally. And so it's easy to just throw on a smile. And, man, it lights up the room when you smile. It's infectious. And so that's such a simple one, but that's one that's easily put on if you can just, throw it on when you realize that maybe you're being a little bit too serious, right? And you're great at that.
I tell people at my seminar, if they get only one thing, and that is to smile more often, then it was worth it, right? And I give them so much value, but if all they take away is a smile, it's worth it. And I was speaking at our M1 event in Mexico, which was one of my favorite events ever. I was speaking and I was, a little nervous. It was my first time speaking in front of that group, and I looked over at you and you were like, making the smile, and so I started smiling, and I
Right.
think I instantly forgot about it. But
Makes a difference.
and
Yeah.
now when I speak, I make a point to smile because the energy that you bring is so different, and your brain starts dumping different chemicals, endorphins, and all these things that make you feel better. And because people want to be like other people they're around, then they start feeling better as well, just because you remember to smile.
And you're big on the energy thing. I mean, that's such a critical component because everything is energy, right? So a
Yes.
smile sends energy out and it makes that energy positive versus a frown or a criticize, condemning, and complaining, back to rule number one, it sends negative energy out. And so it's also contagious. So that smile is really infectious because it's actually pretty rare that you get a lot of people smiling.
Yeah, well, what happens is it changes your hormones. So it sends a different
That's
signal
right.
to your brain. It dumps different hormones, and that hormones are the energy. That's the vibe that you pick up from the people you're around. So if you want to change your vibe, just put a smile on, even if it's
That's
fake.
right. It does help. All right. So the next one
Yeah.
is remember that a person's name is to that person the most important sound in any language. And so often we don't use people's names, and we hear our names billions of times, millions and millions of times
Mm-hmm.
in our lifetime, and it really, there's something anchoring about it. I know you know about anchoring, so it anchors you to
Yes.
something, and it's your identity. Generally your name. You're Nick. If I called you Mike, you'd be like, who's he talking to?
Yes.
It's an important word to use, is that person's name, and use it often. Nick.
And this is one that I could probably improve on. Some things I do well, but forgetting somebody's name is also, it's like a sin, right? Because if you did call me Mike, I'd be like, I must not be important tomorrow. Like, what just
All
happened?
right, all right. I want to dispel this rumor though, okay? Because that's a myth.
Okay.
So we all have this thing where, oh my God, am I going to forget their name? What's their name? Is it Jill or is
Yes.
it Julian? How it's something like that. And everybody else has it too. And so often when I'm fairly good at remembering names, but I never used to be, right? So I
Yeah.
started working on it, and I work on techniques to do it. But just saying the name, going back to that rule and saying it a few times really helps drill it in. But don't be embarrassed if you forget it. Just say, hey, listen, I forgot your name. I'm sorry. And they're going to go, okay, yeah, I usually forget names too, or I'm terrible at names, which is like the worst thing you can say. But that's what you start a conversation around it, right? And so
Yeah.
don't be embarrassed that you forget somebody's name. It's okay. We're all human. We make mistakes.
So I guess I'm thinking that using the wrong name is worse than asking someone if their name for a second time, right?
Well, and again, that's almost the same thing. If you use the wrong name, they should just correct you, and you should
Yeah.
feel comfortable being corrected and not feel, oh, I should have gotten it right, because it's
I'm
okay. You
such
use
an
the wrong,
idiot.
right? Remember we did that.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So, all right. So, people's names are very important. And when you meet them, it's great to anchor it yourself. Hey, Mark, nice to meet you, Mark. And use it a
right,
couple times
2 or 3 times, yeah.
to anchor that.
All right,
Mm-hmm.
next one is speaking of that, is being a great listener. Be a great listener, and that just some of the best conversationalists in your life are the people that don't say a lot, because they ask you a question, they sit back, they're interested in what you have to say, and they kind of are fully engaged and fully present in what you're talking about. And you feel comfortable going on with them. You're one of those kind of people where, I start to talk to you and I feel like, wow, you're actually present, you're listening, and you're genuinely interested in it. So be a great listener.
I also find that, like you, I have a lot to say. I think, I've read so much, and I think a lot. And so
Yeah,
generally I have to remind myself to step back, listen to what someone else has to say without
yeah,
just verbal vomiting. I don't know if you have that
right.
same issue, but
Well, I might have used to have it. I don't. I kind of think I don't have it anymore. It's sometimes I should say more because after these many years, I know a few things. But it's important to be listening because it makes that other person feel heard and feel appreciated, which is what we're talking about here. So I think it's a good one. Talking in terms of the other person's interests is the next one, and that's you become genuinely interested in them, and then you find out what they're interested in, and then start talking about that, and then and using their vocabulary, and that
yes.
creates a rapport, right? And so you want to try to be on that same page and using that same level of vocabulary because it's important.
So we could do probably a week's worth of these on just this point alone,
Right.
talking about some NLP, neuro linguistic programming principles on how to do that. So if I'm listening to you, I can frame my language in the same way that you do. And that makes you go, I really like Nick because he's just like me in these ways.
That's it.
And so if you say, I see what you're saying, I would use visual cues. If you say, I hear you, I would use audio cues. If you say, I feel you, or I'm picking up what you're putting down, I would use kinesthetic clues.
That's right. That's right.
And I would frame everything in those terms.
And let's just go down that road a little bit. If you're a person that likes wrestling, and I know a little bit about wrestling, man, that's something we can talk about for a while. And then we even in our other conversations, we go say, hey, you know, that's almost like when you're pinned and you can't get away, you know. And so you use those same kinds of vocabulary in it. And that brings us to the last rule. Yeah, right. Or economics in our case, right? You love economics.
I do.
And this wraps them all up, and that's to make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. And that's really what we're talking about here, is make them feel important. Why are they important? Because they're great. They're a living human being, and we appreciate them, and we want them to feel appreciated, and we got to make them feel important.
And it's not that difficult. It's really just listening, getting out of your own head, right? And putting your energy into them, feeling what's stopping them, what's, you know, what issues they're going through, and just listening. And and I believe that, you know, people show up the way that they see themselves to be, but they also show up the way that you believe them to be.
That's right.
So I notice when I go to M1 events, I'm like this high energy, super charismatic, competitive guy. And when I go home and I hang out with my family, my parents see me as this high school kid. And the way I behave literally changes. I'm like irresponsible, and I'm kind of like flustered. And I'm like, just because they believe me to be that way and they talk about me in that way. Right. And when I'm around you, it's not like that. And so my behavior is totally different. So I think believing in, do you have that experience?
Yeah, kind of. Carnegie has another principle. It's a bonus one because we're done with the 9. And that is give other people a fine reputation to live up to. You know, tell them you're proud of them, even if you haven't figured out why you're proud of them yet. Tell them that they're a great friend, or a great lover, or a great speaker, or, you know, a great person to hang out with. Let them live into that reputation. Don't put a limit on it. Don't put a ceiling on it.
Yes.
But yeah, I do find that sometimes when you have that in your head, you kind of change the way you react. Yeah.
Well, so those are the first 9 principles of the book. I mean, there's 20 some more there.
Yeah, 20 something more.
I'm pretty good at math, Mark.
Yeah.
But they're all just like that. They're so good and they're so simple. I would encourage you guys to read the book if you haven't. And again, I think it all comes back to just showing people how much you love and appreciate them.
I'll give a resource to the folks that are on the call, and that is, if you just go into the internet and put in Dale Carnegie Golden Book, it has all the principles in there. And so you can just, you know, what they do and teach in the classes, and I highly recommend you take their courses. They're awesome. Is you'll go out and you'll practice actually one of those principles every week, and you'll come back and do a report on it, and you're integrating it, and it starts to become habit. So it's pretty powerful when you concentrate on one at a time.
Yeah, and it's really great to hang out with a guy like you, Mark, and see you living those principles, because then as I see you do it, I'm like, oh, I remember that in the book, and then I remember it and I do it more as well. So that's why it's so important to hang out with like-minded, amazing, positive people, which I'm so blessed to be a part of M1, and I get to see you in a week, and we get to practice some of this stuff. So we're gonna have a blast. Sure.
We are. Okay, so that's what I have to say, and it goes all back to the one thing that I know that you probably want to touch on, and that's positive energy. You know, energy is a wavelength. It's a wavelength that you put out. You may not believe it, but it actually, like you said, changes your hormones, changes your dopamine levels, and it changes the actual energy that you're putting out to the world, and that creates energy back to you.
Yeah, so and it's either love or fear, right?
Yeah.
Love or fear. So, Mark, I got 2 questions that I'm asking everybody before you go.
Okay.
What's your favorite book? I'm sure it's between this and another one, but what's your favorite book?
Well, this is a book I read every year, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and Think and Grow Rich is the other one. So I read each of those 2 books every year. One of them's for one whole part of your life on human relations, and the other one's on you know, how to become a little bit more successful. That's the Think and Grow Rich book. They're both so good
All
together,
right.
though.
So second question, and I know
Yep.
you've devoted your life to personal development, but if you could narrow it down to the one personal development event that was the most impactful for you, what would it be?
I would say it was probably Life Mastery, Tony Robbins' Life Mastery in Fiji.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, it was a cleanse, and I'd never felt so good, and I learned a lot of stuff about my body and health and energy and all that, and you know, it was really good. It was really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I did that in November. It was a great event.
Yeah,
Fantastic
it's a cool event.
stuff.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. So I'm
Yeah,
excited
thank
to
you,
see
buddy.
you next week. Thanks for your
Yeah.
time. I'm sure everybody appreciates it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you soon, Mark.
See you. Take care.